This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. On this episode, Mike Reilly and Mike Ferrante catch up in the new year and continue to talk about all the ways that investing in Cleveland is not for the faint of heart.
Hello, Mike Ferrante. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mr. Reilly.
It's January 6th. This shitty 2020 is over. We're in a new year and 13 more days to a new administration.
Yeah, it's actually the 7th, so you missed a day in there. I've seen a lot of people posting on Facebook. I want to cancel my 1 week free trial on 2021 and return it.
So, hey, it's been a while since we did a podcast, so let's catch up if we still have listeners out there listening to us. So, give me the state of the market as it is right now in the Cleveland.
Yeah, so right, the Cleveland market is a traditional sort of Midwest market where the holidays you have your seasonal slowdown, and typically right after the 1st of January things start picking up again, and this year is no different. I ran the numbers for 2020 and the market is very strong as far as number of sales, prices, market time is very short. The only challenge we have right now is inventory. So no sign of anything changing right now. There's not going to miraculously be a bunch of new inventory, and we anticipate sales to be brisk and prices to continue to rise.
Well, so I can report one of the few times in my memory, maybe back in 2003, right before we got a mini recession. This is a seller's market, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And for those people who don't know what that means, it essentially means sellers are in charge. There's less inventory than there are buyers, and homes sell quickly, and sellers are getting their price.
You know, let's talk a little bit about it because we ran into a few snafus this year. I'm thinking of our one customer who we talked about selling, and you had set a price point of about 119, or I don't know what the price was. You know who I'm talking about. We're not going to name any names. And that thing just flew off the market with an investor. Then they were overjoyed at the price that you thought they could get for the house. It lasted like 2 days on the market, and then they thought, well, wait a minute, you guys are pulling a fast one, right?
Right.
And looking at it now, I can see we didn't really anticipate how hot the market was. Is that a fair assessment, looking backwards?
Yeah, looking backwards, I think that because there were so few choices, that it was a perfect storm, and a buyer walked in the door and paid what we would consider to be an exorbitant price. But the thing is, market value is what a buyer is willing to pay. So in that case, that buyer said, yeah, I'll pay that price.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something we're not really used to here in Cleveland. Right. We want to make sure we're still thinking like it's 5 years ago, and we want to set a price so that it's fair, what the comps support, but we don't want this house sitting on the market more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've got the flip side going on right now. You know, in an even more desirable market, which is Beechwood. And anyone who knows Greater Cleveland knows Beechwood is one of the hottest markets around. You've got a Orthodox Jewish community that is sort of a captive market, and they need to be in that area so they can walk to shul on Saturdays. And not only that, it's a hot market because of the great school district, and just so much about Beechwood is great. We thought, geez, things are hot. Let's price aggressively. And so we've got this wonderful house with a great location, and it's sitting in about its 3rd week on the market. So it's really turned into a bit of a guessing game. And I think a lot of it centers around, do you have a buyer or several buyers in the market right now for what you're peddling? Or in the case of this Beechwood house, right now there just isn't a buyer for it who's willing to pay what we thought was a little bit high price, but here it is sitting for 3 weeks with no buyers.
Wow. Well, maybe it's because in that Orthodox area, it's a real upscale Orthodox area. Yeah, on the one hand, it's a captive market, but on the other hand, it's also a limited market. So
right, yeah, you're You're absolutely right. It's not like there's dozens and dozens of buyers at any given time. There might be one, two, three buyers, and if you're not selling what they're looking for, then they'll wait or go elsewhere.
Right. Now, let's talk about that one situation on Guilford Road, that house that, let me set this up for our listeners. This is a mansion that was owned by a family for 50 years. And it's probably a 7-8 room mansion with a separate carriage house, which has 2 bedrooms and a greenhouse on a corner lot. And that house supposedly was under contract over a year ago, December 2019. And it still hasn't closed. It's still sitting there vacant. And every now and then we see these kind of weird situations where it's under contract. The realtor says it's under contract. Meanwhile, the house is sitting there vacant.
Yep. Very bizarre.
So Dr. Ferrante, what do you think's going on over there?
Yeah, well, this is, we did a little digging on this, and they claim to have not only an offer, but a backup offer, and we expressed interest. And, these houses that sit are always a bit of a puzzle. So unless you can sneak in the back door figuratively and figure out what's going on, really all they told us was that there was some kind of complication on the part of the seller. And, these sometimes can be estate/probate issues,
right,
where they're unable to get probate approval in a timely manner. I've also seen instances where there are lien issues and a sale turns into a short sale because of unforeseen lien issues. I have one right now where we had a deal all set up, ready to close in 30 days. And next thing you know, these lien holders just kind of come out of the woodwork. And so now, instead of the seller saying, what's my net? The seller saying, well, geez, I got to bring X amount of thousand to the table. I can't do that. Right. So now it turns into some wrangling to see if we can still close the deal. So there's always a variety of reasons that a house may sit under contract and not close. Unless you can get some straight answers from the seller or the agent, you kind of have to guess.
Well, let's move to our one of our chief audiences of these podcasts, which are the investors, these out-of-state investors that are just swooping around like buzzards, looking for something to eat in the Cleveland market. We're getting a lot of calls every week from people looking for property managers. Now, we've devoted a podcast earlier in the year about the pitfalls of hiring a property manager. I don't want to necessarily regurgitate that, but I do want to add to that podcast because what I'm starting to see with some of our investor clients where they've already bought the house and we go in there, they want us to, get them a tenant, manage the property. We vetted them, we vetted the property that they bought, and we've deemed it an area that we're going to have a good success renting it out. And I'm thinking of, the Cedar Road house and then the Kensington house, 2 separate investors. But one thing I've discovered is that every time we start getting this thing ready to rent and we get a tenant in, we start uncovering a lot of problems. And then I go back to the client with some bad news. I said, hey, listen, you got to fix this, you got to fix this, you got to fix this. And then I find out they never really had the house inspected. They didn't check the drains, they didn't check the roof, they didn't check this. Yeah, it's point of sale compliant. But they were so eager to buy the property that they just swooped it up. They did their little cap rate formulas. Yeah, if I buy it, the house will support this amount of rents, and okay, let's go for it. And then they discovered, to their horror, they got another 10, 15,000, almost 20,000 to put into it. You're seeing that too, aren't you? With some of your,
I've been seeing this since 2009, Mike. I mean, this has been a common phone call that I get where they either are asking for someone to right the ship, They say, I bought this property. It's great on paper, but I'm not making any money. I need a different property manager. Or they've decided you're about to throw their hands in the air and they say, I'm done with this. I've lost my butt on it. I need to sell it. And then, you and I go there and say, yeah, you could sell it, but you got to do all this work just to get it to where it should be as far as the value that you want to get. And then they reconsider. And sometimes they say, well, I'm not going to lose money on it. I'll bite the bullet, do the repairs and hold it for a while. But the lack of due diligence on the front end is a common problem. They become enamored with the numbers on paper and don't do their due diligence and get hurt in the end.
Well, we had done a podcast, another podcast, where we said investing in Cleveland is not for the faint of heart. Because more often than not, people go in there, they are starry-eyed. They can't believe the prices. I think I said in one earlier podcast, you had investors say, well, I just bought 5 houses for $30,000. Well, that guy just overpaid. And I think that investing in Cleveland on real estate always sounds good. Yeah, I bought some real estate. I'm investing in real estate. I mean, it's not like you're saying, well, you're not proudly saying, well, I just got a job as a garbage man. No, I'm investing in real estate. I'm a landholder, blah, blah, blah. Boy, that sounds great. The reality is that and most of these ends up to be money pits, just endless repairs. And then you got to go find a tenants and the rents, the ongoing repairs. After 1 year with the tenant you found or your property manager found, they destroyed the house. And 1 year later, you have to sink another 10,000 in. And by a year and a half into it, the bloom is off the rose, as you were mentioning. I have found more often than not, when I have investors calling me, I'll say, where's the house? What did you pay for? What are you getting in rents? And then I'll simply say, sell the house. Just sell it. Bite the bullet. Just get rid of it. I mean, it's the seller's market now. So if you investors are stuck with a property, this is a great time to unload it, because there is a lot of dumb money coming into Cleveland. And there's always going to be another person who's going to see gold in a house that you realize is not gold. It's fool's gold.
We just sold 2 multifamily homes on the west side of Cleveland. The sellers knew they had overpaid and they were prepared to lose money on these houses. They just didn't perform well for all the reasons you just mentioned. And they said, look, Mike, we understand we're going to lose a little bit of money on these, but do what you can. And exactly what you said happened. Multiple offers, drove up the price. And at the end of it, they had big smiles on their faces, because where they were ready to lose a few thousand, they made a few thousand. And, I personally agree with you. I think your phrase dumb money is well put, because I think these folks overpaid. I hate to say it, because I was the listing agent, but I think that they didn't do their research. They paid too much for a product that's going to cost them more money down the road.
Well, we've seen this, and you see this a lot in the stock market too, where if you watch CNBC or the other financial networks, they talk about momentum stocks, where stocks go up not because of the fundamentals, but because other people are buying the stock. So it starts bidding up, and eventually it's going to reach a point where it's just going to crash. I mean, that's some of the high-flying stocks this past year, like Zoom, the stay-at-home kind of tech stocks. I mean, look if you're buying Zoom now, and by the way, we're doing this on Zoom.
Right.
But if you're buying that stock now in Zoom, I mean, you're buying it at the height of the tulip craze. That's not going to be appreciating. Okay, so investors out there, number one, if you've already bought a house and without inspecting it, and you don't know what to do with it, you're looking for a property manager, always keep in mind that exit door, that you may have made a dumb move buying this house. You're in a bad area. which is not going to rent well, and it's not going to appreciate well. And whatever tenant you get in there, there's a good chance that you're going to have a problem with the tenant, and you're going to have a problem with the tenant taking care of the house. So maybe you should think about bailing. Now, if you're going to bail, that's when you talk to the two of us, the Mike and Mike team, as your financial planner. Don't think of us as your real estate or your property manager. Think about as your financial planner, because as I mentioned earlier in earlier podcast, what you want to do is you want to buy the right house in the right location and do your due diligence on the mechanicals, make sure there's no surprises there. And then you get into a house that is going to rent well, maybe short-term rent, maybe long-term, maybe Airbnb in an area which there's not a lot of Airbnb in. And that's the ticket to success now. The question is, all right, geniuses, where do you go and buy that house? What would you say?
Well, it depends what the goal is, but you talked about Airbnb, and of course you're located in the Heights area, and I can't even tell you how many people approach us and say, "Oh, I'm here to be at the Cleveland Clinic for a month or 6 months or a weekend." The short-term rental market is very much lacking. There's just no inventory for that type of market. But I do love the Heights area, and anything around what we have sometimes jokingly called the mothership, the Cleveland Clinic, and then you've got UH and Case Western down there. There's so much going on around University Circle. I think that that whole area is potentially a home run for investors. Little Italy, another area, all circling around that Heights area though.
Right. And the reason is because you get that concentration around the mothership. You're in a good neighborhood, safe neighborhoods. Even if it's a pandemic, you got lots of places where you can get takeout. There's a lot of there's the whole shadow market of people that are looking to rent short term. And not just the clinic. It's people that are coming in, they're relocating, they're buying a house, but they just want to live somewhere temporarily 3-4 months while they go look for a house. That's probably 20% of our market right there on short term. Is that person?
Yeah, and it's a double home run, because you don't only have the option of short term. That Heights area, you also get people who want to sign 2 and 3 year leases, because the doctors and professionals that come here for a job, they don't always want to buy. And so you've got a really nice pool of tenants there that maybe want to rent for 1 to 5 years. And
right.
So I think you've got lots of options in that area, and the prices are still pretty reasonable. Now, like you said, it's not like 5 years ago when you could pick up stuff and you couldn't believe the numbers, but I think there's still some really good opportunities over there.
Right. And there's here's a few things I want to throw everybody's way. One that I've realized is when you buy a house, let's say, and you're going to fix it up and flip it. First of all, you don't necessarily have to flip that house. You can buy the house and fix it up nicely for an Airbnb. And what is the Airbnb quality? They're not necessarily looking for granite counters.
Right.
They're not looking for $50,000 kitchen with new cabinets, updated bathrooms. I mean, they're only going to be there for a couple of weeks, couple of months. What they're looking for is safe. The mechanicals work.
Yep.
The decor is nice and clean.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not windows washed, landscaping, no leaks, safe, quiet neighborhood. That's it. So instead of buying a house for 100 and dropping 150 in, you can buy a house for 100 and put 75,000 in, and your return on the Airbnb is extraordinary on that. The other thing I've learned in the last couple of months is that there are a whole lot of reluctant landlords out there. Now, what is a reluctant landlord, Mike? What do you think a reluctant landlord is?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. These are folks that wanted to sell their homes, but couldn't get what they needed out of them. And so they started renting, in hopes that one day the prices would catch up to what they needed to get out of the house, either due to mortgaging or they did a refinance. And so you got people who really didn't want to get into the rental business, but rather than lose money, or maybe they weren't in a position to bring money to close, they rented their house out.
Right. And we have a couple of clients that we've had that going back 8-9 years ago, when right after the crash, one guy is a heart surgeon now in Kentucky, and he was told, oh yeah, we're going to do your residency at the UH. The smart move would be to buy a house. That would be the smart move. Instead of renting, you're going to be here for 3 years, you buy this house. Okay, guess what? He bought it in 2007. Okay, yeah. That was not the smart move. That was the dumb move. So he graduates from med school. He goes down to Kentucky, and he is, he's working, 16-hour days. Meanwhile, he's burdened with student debt on his medical school, and he's got a house that if he sold it, he'd have to write a check for $20,000 because it all crashed. So he ends up being a landlord, and like 3 or 4 other clients we had, they lost their jobs, they had to relocate. The house they were in was suddenly worth $20,000 less. They couldn't afford to write a check. All these people are now reluctant landlords. They didn't get into this to be a landlord. They got into this thinking this was going to be the smart move. That I was going to buy a house. Then I assume in a couple of years when I sell it, it would appreciate, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it went down. Now, these reluctant landlords hate being a landlord. Every time they have to fix something, they cringe. It's like, you have this wound and you're constantly touching it. Well, we need to replace the dishwasher. Ouch. The furnace just went out. Ouch. After barely making their mortgage payment with the rent and doing these repairs, now they're losing money on this money pit. They can't wait to sell. They can't wait to sell. So here comes our investor, like you're listening now, Mr. or Mrs. Investor. Here's where you want to go. You want to ease their pain, okay? Ease their burden. You can come to us and we can give you a list of a couple of people who we already have a tenant in there and they're ready to sell. They're ready to sell for whatever they owe. And if you make a fair offer, they'll just give it up. They'll just give you that house and everybody will be happy. And that, you're going to walk into a house, probably minimal repairs, where you've got a good tenant there that's been there and paying their rent and not destroying the house. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the secret, because we know right now with the short inventory, finding those people, finding the reluctant landlords, that's the trick, and I know a lot of these wholesaler guys are just hammering on the phones. They're dialing, they're finding the phone numbers for these people and just trying to dig them up. But yeah, that's a great source of creating inventory, so to speak, because there's so little.
Right. Or getting a customer, like a lot of our customers that, we've been in business 45 years. They're getting ready to downsize. They're going to retirement home, or maybe the parents died. Believe me, the kids are out of town. The last thing they want to do is fix it up, get it on the market. Now, some do. Some want to, get the most out of the sale, but they don't want to play general contractor. Right. And so if you make an offer for them, listen, we'll take the house as is. We'll, whatever furniture you don't want, we'll get rid of it for you, or we'll take it. That's another good source of a home to invest in. So I guess what we're talking about is, to sum it all up, is if you're looking to invest in Cleveland, you do not want to go on the MLS. Don't even go there. Okay, everybody's there. Everybody's fish in that pond. There are other sources that you can go to invest your money that you know is going to pay off. And it's thinking outside the box. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of investors are doing. I know I still look, and I have clients who still look at the MLS, but you're right, Mike, it's getting harder and harder to find the deals there. So I think if you're not looking at non-MLS sources, that you're going to have a hard time coming up with deals. I just met with a guy today who that's a big part of his business is buying homes. And the reason we were meeting is because he found exactly what you're talking about. There was the guy's father was deceased, and he just wanted to unload the house. And he found this guy. He connected with him in a manner that was not, the house wasn't listed, and so he performed a service. He comes from a place of, how can I help you? And so he's getting this guy out of the house with a fair price, but with enough margin where he can make some money. But I'm with you, Mike. I mean, obviously I'm a realtor and I'm never going to tell people don't use the MLS. But
Yeah.
but I guess my point is, if you're not looking at alternate sources for off-market deals, that you're behind everybody else, because everyone else has come to that realization and they're already out there digging.
Right. Exactly. So, okay. Well, I think we've covered enough for this podcast, and we'll have something up in about 2 weeks, right? You've got something you're teeing up, right? You
Yeah.
want to tell our listeners about it?
Yeah. So we do a weekly live little show Tuesdays 11:30 to 12. A lot of it is for agents, but we throw some good content out there, and you and I will get together on a date where we're going to talk about maintaining the value of your home, because there's two scenarios, and you put the one really well. So you get someone who's been in a house for 20 years and they go to sell it and they say, oh my gosh, but I hear prices are rising. And so on one hand, you're telling me how great the market is, but they didn't do anything to their house for 20 years.
Right.
And they want to know why the heck their house isn't worth $1 million.
Well, but then but Mike, we got to be careful now, because it's a dumb money market. There are people that they may be right. We may be the ones 5 years behind. We may be, because we made that mistake a couple times. We say, hey, yeah, man, this house ain't going to sell. Hey, investor bought that sight unseen and overpaid.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
yeah, and right, there's the two sides of the coin, but I can tell you that I own a home, and every year I do a little something, and so I think to kind of cover your bets, that if you're not doing certain things to your home regularly to maintain the value, that you could be in for a rude awakening when you do go to sell. And that's
Right.
kind of where I wanted to go. We see this all the time, Mike, where the basement has gotten moldy because you didn't address the moisture issues that you have down there.
Right.
Peeling paint, and just I don't want to spoil it, but there's so many things that as a homeowner you really need to do to have the best chance of preserving your home's value.
Right. Okay. All right. What's going on back there, Mike? We're gonna have to edit that out, that noise.
Oh, was it, it's the whole work from home. I think that was my dog.
Okay. All right. Well, your dog won't be on the podcast.
Oh, she'll be so disappointed.
All right. Okay, everybody, stay safe. And we'll pick this up later in the month.
All right, great. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. Find new or old episodes on www.reilly-properties.com or on your favorite streaming services like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more.